All right. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, all you magnificent melonheads of the world. Happy Thursday, everybody. Today's July 10th, 2025. And the top story this morning is GM. And I'm not talking about General Motors. I'm talking about government magnets. The Department of Defense has just taken out a 15% stake in MP Materials, the United States' only maker of rare earth magnets. So the Pentagon is investing $400 million in equity. They are literally buying stock in the company. They'll own 15% of the shares. And we've also got some other things along with this. The banks are loaning them $1 billion. What are they doing with all this money? They're supposed to be building a second manufacturing plant for neodymium magnets, something that is very desperately needed by our economy and in particular our military, hence the DOD is doing this. They're supposed to have this new plant coming online by 2028. The government has also promised to buy what this plant produces. So look, that stock is ripping this morning. It's up more than 40% on this news. The U.S. government is now borrowing money, which is largely printed by central banks inevitably, and they're buying stocks with it. Who had that on their 2020s bingo card? Now, look, this is obviously the rare earths has been a major point of contention between the U.S. and China. U.S. automakers are having trouble sourcing their rare earths. There was articles last week about how some automakers may be forced to shut down if we don't get more of these things in from China. The Chinese supply virtually all of the rare earths the United States uses. And, well, our economy and our military needs them. And if we end up at war with China, let's just say it's probably unlikely they'll be willing to sell those things to us. So I understand the need for this, but the government getting in the business of producing rare earth magnets, you'd think if there was so much demand, the economy would just produce it anyway. But here in the United States, we seem to have forgotten to make things, produce things, do things. All our economy really seems capable of producing is Ponzi schemes, shit coins, and round-tripping schemes in order to build out data centers. We certainly can't build ships or power plants or dig up rare earth magnets out of the ground, not without the government paying for it. So while I'm hopeful this project succeeds, can't help but shake my head a little bit that the government has to buy stock in the company in order for this to happen. It's not exactly a good day for capitalism, let's put it that way. Also going on this morning, President Trump surprised the world yesterday. He can still do that, by the way. Just when you think he can't surprise you anymore, he goes and does it. When he put 50% tariffs on Brazil. Now, that's pretty interesting because 50% tariffs, significantly higher than the prior Liberation Day levels that Brazil was hit with. And the other thing, most of the tariffs, if we realized on Liberation Day that the formula for calculating the tariffs was based on our trade deficits with our various trade partners. The U.S. runs a massive trade deficit. And so the tariffs were viewed largely as a way to correct this trade deficit. But the problem is with Brazil, the United States has a trade surplus. We actually sell them more stuff than we buy from them. So if we put 50% tariffs on them and say they hypothetically put 50% tariffs on us, well, it hurts us more. So it's not the trade deficit. That's not what they're trying to fix with this. What are they trying to fix with this? What is President Trump's motivation? A lot of people are speculating here that it may have to do with Brazil's targeting of U.S. social media companies, namely Twitter, X. Brazil was trying to shut down Twitter because of hate speech and misinformation. And by the way, every time the left wants to silence their opposition, that's all they do. They just take that stamp, they call it hate speech and say, ban it, rawr, everything I don't like is hate speech automatically, or misinformation. We need to protect people from dangerous ideas. Yeah, that's what they do whenever they want to silence something. But you know what? I don't really think that's what's doing it. Do you think President Trump is really out there carrying the flag for Elon Musk's social media company right now? Probably not with the feud going on between him and Elon. The other thing that's been floated as a possible reason for this is Brazil's prosecution of their former president, Bolsonaro. He's the right-wing opposition leader within the country. He's being prosecuted for a coup attempt, supposedly, by President da Silva, the leftist leader in Brazil. That's possibly a reason why, maybe a little bit personal for Trump. You may recall he was prosecuted by his political opponents as well. So Maybe that's what's going on. Or maybe it's something they're not talking about. Maybe this has more to do with isolating China. Maybe this has more to do with BRICS. We saw tariffs on South Africa, pretty high tariffs we put on South Africa earlier this week. We saw President Trump announce that 10% tariffs were going to be applied to anybody who supports anti-American BRICS policies. Well, Brazil is the B in BRICS, so maybe this has more to do with trying to dismantle that trading bloc than anything else. We don't really know. The point is, coffee is going to get more expensive, and just don't mess with the wake-up juice, guys. That's all I can tell you. So, going to be paying a little bit more in the morning thanks to tariffs on Brazil. Now, also in trade war news this morning, we got news out of Japan. Japanese car makers are eating the tariffs almost entirely. No price increases for Japanese cars, or at least very little. It's all coming out of their profit margins. And of course, anybody who's been watching Japanese automakers for the last few months, in particular Nissan, might be asking yourselves, what profit margins? Nissan doesn't have any profit margins. And well, that's an entirely valid point. People can't afford higher prices for cars. They're already too expensive. So Japanese automakers looking to pass the tariffs on to consumers, they just can't do it. And in the case of Nissan, they don't have the profit margins in order to raise prices to offset the tariffs. So Nissan is just cutting production, just resulting in fewer cars getting made. So that's has to wonder, the other Japanese car makers besides Nissan, how long can they keep this up for? And if they can't, it ultimately results in fewer cars getting made. And this has been one of the major points of contention. The auto tariffs and the steel tariffs are two of the biggest things that the Japanese are really pushing to get rid of those, to try to make their deal, whatever trade deal is or isn't happening with the Japanese. Those are the two major issues. And you can see how it's taken a big chunk out of Japan. We got some data points today showing that those Japanese automakers are indeed just swallowing the cost. So for all you folks who are in the comments saying tariffs are not inflationary, well, you guys, point on the board for you guys, because where you'd think tariffs would drive costs higher, and I said it a lot over the last few months that tariffs are inflationary, not when it comes to vehicles, at least not yet. Also, speaking of people who can't afford higher prices, Amazon Prime Day. We got our first full day of data. We talked about this one yesterday, how during the first few hours, it looked like Amazon Prime was down about 14% versus last year, the Prime Day sales. Well, we finally got our full day of data, and it's even worse. Now, Prime Day this year is 4 days instead of 2, so maybe we end up with more total sales over Prime Day if you account the 4-day sales. Maybe not, but so far it's looking like the American consumer, his spending is starting to slow. He is not rushing out to buy discounted crap on Amazon. The one thing Americans are doing is flying. At least rich Americans are flying. Delta Airlines stock is booming this morning. They reinstated their guidance. You may recall Delta, along with several other airlines, pulled their guidance back in April following Liberation Day and the trade war escalation, saying we just need to see what's going to happen. Canadians aren't coming here because Orange Man bad. Well, Delta reinstated their guidance this morning when they reported their earnings, and it was pretty good. It wasn't as good as it was at the start of the year, but it was certainly better than the market had feared. That stock is ripping, and Delta mentioned that the earnings were pretty good because of their higher priced seats and some of the upgraded packages that the airline sells. Wealthy travelers spending more money is more than offsetting poorer travelers who have less money to fly. We've also got OpenAI was in the news yesterday. They have a new plan to release a browser. They're going after a chunk of Google's market share. Will they succeed? Only time will tell. And we got jobless claims data this morning. It's, more of the same. Another tick up in continuing jobless claims. Not a huge tick up, but people who lose their jobs are still struggling to find work. We got a lot to talk about this morning. Why don't we shrink my big melon of a head and let's see what's going on in the world of finance this morning. Hey, don't forget that like button and that subscribe button for the algorithm if you're new here, because we do this every day. So come on back and have your coffee with the melon heads. And right now, the S&P 500, it's in the red here, about 7 points lower, 0.1% to the downside. The Dow, meanwhile, is off by 91 points, or 0.2% to the downside. And the NASDAQ is off by 9 points, or about 0.05%. So stocks, all three indexes in the red, but going a whole bunch of nowhere here. Not a very big move, essentially flat on the morning. We do have a slightly stronger dollar again this morning, 97.6. We've seen the dollar catch a little bit of a bounce this week, emphasis a little bit. We ticked below that 97 threshold a couple of days ago. We were in that 96.9, 96.8 region. We've caught a nice bounce now, a little bit above 97, still way down from its highs. And looking over at the bond market this morning, we got yields are a little bit higher on the long end once again. The 30-year Treasury is higher by a fraction of 1 point, barely anything, 4.878 for the 30-year. The 10-year, meanwhile, 4.353. That's higher by a point and change. The 2 years up by a half a point at 3.868. And even the 1 month is a half a point higher at 4.309. So a little bit of movement in the bond market. And speaking of the bond market, something I just thought I would mention here. Shout out to Charlie Bilello for this one on X this morning. A $410 billion increase in the U.S. national debt since the debt ceiling was raised less than a week ago. As a matter of fact, this is 2 days of data. $37 trillion coming soon. Look at this, guys. $410 billion increase. Let's blow up this image. I don't know if you can see the image on the screen. We were $36.2 trillion in debt on July 3rd. Then the one big, beautiful bill passes and the debt ceiling gets raised. And now, magically, 2 business days later, $36.6 trillion in debt. $400 billion in 2 days. Boy, am I glad we cut all that waste, fraud, and abuse. Note sarcasm. Meanwhile, on the commodities board, we've got spot gold is higher by about $15 this morning, 0.5% higher, $3,328 for spot gold. Spot silver is having a good morning here, up 50 cents or about 1.4% higher at $36.88. I like the shiny. Copper, meanwhile, up by 2.6%. The copper rally continuing this morning after those tariffs on copper were announced. You still have that drain of metal. People are scrambling to get their copper into the States before the tariff deadline hits. And for now, that's caused an arbitrage and is sending copper prices higher here. We've also got platinum is higher by 3.8%, $1,438 for October platinum futures. Good morning for all the metals, and palladium is leading the way higher at 5.6% up this morning. All the metals looking pretty good. One thing that is not up this morning, however, is crude oil at $67.16 for August WTI futures. That's lower by $1.20 or about 1.75%. And do we have coffee on this chart? We do have coffee futures are higher by about a fraction of 1%. Keep an eye on those coffee prices as these tariffs on Brazil. That is one thing we buy a lot of from Brazil. Looking over at Bitcoin, had a great day yesterday. Bitcoin was up about $2,000 per coin yesterday. We peaked over 112,000. We hit a new all-time high yesterday of $112,152 as priced on Coinbase. We are slightly off of those highs this morning, 110,987. That's down a little bit from its peak. But Bitcoin here threatening to overtake those recent highs. If we do see a breakout, it means we're probably going to be heading towards 120 in pretty short order. But once again, guys, I've been saying it over and over again on the channel. Be careful on your leverage. Bitcoin winter is coming at some point in the next few months if that historical post-halving pattern plays out for a fourth time. And I see no reason to suspect that it won't. Now, here is the big story this morning. The Pentagon invests in rare earth magnet producer to back a new plant. Government magnets. Rare earth magnet producer MP Materials secured a $400 million equity investment from the U.S. Department of Defense to build a new plant, along with a $1 billion financing commitment from J.P. Morgan and Goldman Sachs, and the shares soared. The operator of the U.S.'s sole rare earth mine in Mountain Pass, California, will construct a second magnet manufacturing plant called the 10X facility at a soon-to-be-chosen location, the company said in a statement. It jumped almost 50% in pre-market trading. The U.S. has long been reliant on China for rare earths, something the Asian country used to its advantage in responding to the trade war initiated by President Trump. China leveraged its dominance of the supply chain to retaliate against American tariffs, adding impetus to U.S. efforts to build up a domestic alternative. With a purchase of a 15% stake, the Pentagon will become MP's largest shareholder. The Pentagon also agreed to purchase any of the plant's neodymium, I don't know how to pronounce this, neodymium P, we'll call it, products, At a floor price of $110 per kilogram, the new facility is expected to begin commissioning in 2028, the company said, and will boost U.S. magnet output to 10,000 metric tons per year. This company is ripping this morning. MP Materials is higher by 40.9%. I don't know if this one is halted here or not. Let's refresh this and see if it's still moving. Nope, I'm sorry. It is not halted because it's higher by 63.6% ahead of the opening bell, trading at $49.28 on that big commitment of cash from the DOD, along with the $1 billion loan from the big banks and the commitment by the Pentagon to buy what this new factory produces. So we should see that up and running by 2028. Hopefully that's not too late. Also in the trade war front this morning, Lula and Trump clash as U.S. tariffs turn political. As Trump hits Brazil with 50% tariffs, it's unclear what Lula could even offer if he were to negotiate. Perhaps the most surprising thing about the public feud that erupted yesterday between Donald Trump and Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva is that it took so long to burst into the open. Both men are freewheeling, firebrand, near-octogenarian leaders who speak their minds. Neither has made much effort to hide his contempt for the other. Trump's threat to slap 50% tariffs on Brazil seems punitive, coming after his condemnation of the BRICS summit in Rio de Janeiro as anti-American. For Lula, it's a crucial test. Brazil is no longer nearly as dependent on the U.S. as it was, but it's still a large export market, second only to China. The real sank almost 3% against the dollar on the news. Trump suggested the tariffs are partly retribution for Brazil's targeting of U.S. social media over hate speech and disinformation. I really doubt that. I doubt Trump is really trying to save Twitter, especially not during this Musk feud that's going on here. But he also called on Brazilian authorities to drop charges against his friend and Lula rival Jair Bolsonaro, I don't know if I said that right, who's accused of a coup attempt. Lula said Brazil won't accept any form of tutelage and threatened to retaliate, spelling further escalation. Again, the U.S. has a trade surplus with Brazil. So, look, the saying to a hammer, everything looks like nails. And in this point, the hammer is Trump and the nails are tariffs. And, we've got some kind of problem in Brazil, tariffs on Brazil, something we don't like there. It doesn't matter if we have a trade surplus or not, just tariffs for everybody. That's a big one. We'll see what happens. But for now, folks, it looks like the coffee is going to get a little bit more expensive once again. Now, another one in the trade front here, Japan's car makers slash export prices to the U.S. to offset the tariff hit. And this story is pretty big, in my opinion. It's kind of hiding. It's buried beneath the headlines. But the fact that these tariffs on autos are not being passed on to the U.S. consumer, that is a very big deal. And I don't think the press is going to make a big deal out of it because they don't want to say anything that might make Mr. Orange look good. But Japan's automakers slashed the price of products exported to the U.S. at a record pace in a sign that companies are sacrificing profits to remain competitive as President Trump's tariffs hit cars. Last month, the export price index for vehicles shipped to North America plunged by 19.4% from a year earlier on a contract currency basis. That's the biggest drop in records going all the way back to 2016, according to the Bank of Japan's corporate goods price report on Thursday. The data adds to signs that Japanese automakers are trying to avoid a major price increase to remain competitive in the U.S., even after Trump began to impose 25% auto tariffs in April. The flip side of the move is it raises concerns over companies' profitability and whether they can continue to keep raising wages. That's a key component of the BOJ's sustainable inflation goal. While Japanese automakers, including Subaru, have announced some price increases, Japan's strategy of not raising prices too much has shown up in other data as well. Car exports to the U.S., which make up about a quarter of U.S.-bound shipments, declined by 24.7% by value in May, but only 3.9% by volume. And that 24.7% decline in value, well, that is almost exactly what the tariffs were on autos. So no price hikes at the auto dealer, at least not from tariffs on Japanese cars. The Japanese automakers are eating it in their profit margins, those who have profit margins. Some are just cutting production. See also all the articles about Nissan we've seen lately. And Amazon Prime Day sales are off 41% on the first day, Brand Advisor says. This is a continuation of something we talked about yesterday, and the data is getting worse here. Now, the day before, yesterday we were talking about a 14% decline in the opening hours of Prime Day, and it looks like that got worse throughout the first day here. But there's a big asterisk on this number. Amazon took a big gamble this year by expanding its annual Prime Day summer sale to 4 days from 2, betting the extension would give shoppers more time to navigate the millions of deals on its sprawling web store. Some of the preliminary results are grim, raising the stakes for the event's remaining days. Momentum Commerce, which manages online sales for 50 brands in a variety of product categories and price points, said its Amazon sales had plunged 41% on Tuesday when compared with the start of Prime Day last year. The prolonged event has encouraged shoppers to do more treasure hunting, said John Shea, Momentum's founder and CEO. Consumers are browsing and loading up shopping carts, but postponing pulling the trigger in case better deals emerge. Shorter Prime Day sales generated more urgency because shoppers worried they'd miss the discounts. Wall Street seemed to believe that there's still time for Prime Day sales to pick up and pushed Amazon shares up 1.5% for the day, an advance that was in line with Microsoft and Alphabet shares yesterday. They extended Prime Day from 2 days to 4 days, so it's unclear that there really is a drop-off in activity, said Gil Loria, an analyst at D.A. Davidson and a former guest here on Nobody's Special Finance. We had Gil on the channel about a month ago. We'll find out some when they report the quarter, but it's very hard to pin down how well Prime Day has gone. And it's that apples to oranges comparison. We're comparing a 4-day sale to a 2-day sale. So maybe that 41% decline doesn't really matter. That seems to be the prevailing currents in the market because Amazon was up 1.4% yesterday. That's pretty much the same move all the big tech names made yesterday. It's down about 1/3% this morning. Again, roughly in line with what the other big tech names are doing. So far, Prime Day is not really moving the stock. That's the point. $221.75 for Amazon shares ahead of the opening bell. Meanwhile, Delta Airlines shares jumped 10% after the airline reinstates a 2025 profit outlook as CEO says bookings have stabilized. Delta Airlines cut its 2025 profit forecast as it deals with lower than expected demand this year and as the industry manages a glut of flights, but the carrier's outlook for summer travel beat Wall Street expectations. Bookings have since stabilized, CEO Ed Bastian said in an interview, though at lower levels than the airline expected at the start of the year. People are still traveling, Bastian said. What they've done is they've shifted their booking patterns a little bit. They're holding off on making plans until they're a little closer to their actual travel dates. And so that's shifted some of our bookings and yield management strategies. Delta posted strong growth from sales of higher priced seats like first class and from its lucrative American Express partnership, which increased 10% in the second quarter from the same period last year to $2 billion. Airlines have become more reliant on travelers who are willing to spend more to fly rather than more price-sensitive consumers. And we've seen that repeat in a lot of different sectors of the economy. The wealthy are doing really well and spending more money. Everybody else is not. And at least for now, that's working for Delta here. Check out Delta stock ahead of the opening bell. Let's refresh this one. Delta stock is up 11.4% on this news of reinstating their guidance, $56.60 for Delta. Meanwhile, OpenAI will release a web browser in a challenge to Google's Chrome. Scam Altman is at it again this morning. OpenAI is close to releasing an AI-powered web browser that will challenge Alphabet's market-dominating Google Chrome, 3 people familiar with the matter told Reuters. The browser is slated to launch in the coming weeks, 3 of the people said, and aims to use artificial intelligence to fundamentally change how consumers browse the web. It will give OpenAI more direct access to cornerstone of Google's success, user data. If adopted by the 400 million weekly active users of ChatGPT, OpenAI's browser could put pressure on a key component of rival Google's ad money spigot. Chrome is an important pillar of Alphabet's ad business, which makes up nearly 3/4 of its revenue, as Chrome provides user information to help Alphabet target ads more effectively and profitably, and also gives Google a way to route search traffic to its own engine by default. OpenAI's browser is designed to keep some user interactions within a ChatGPT-like native chat interface instead of clicking through to websites, 2 of the sources said. Now, that is very important there, that paragraph. I want to emphasize that one here. The browser is designed to keep people using ChatGPT's chat interface instead of clicking on websites. In other words, ChatGPT is stealing. They are taking the content from websites and then giving it to ChatGPT's users. And the ChatGPT users don't have to click on those websites. They don't have to visit those websites in order to get the information that's on them, which means those websites are denied the traffic, denied the ad revenue associated with them, or denied the paid membership that comes along with them. In other words, ChatGPT is just straight up stealing the intellectual property of websites all across the web, and they keep doing it. Now, a couple of court cases have been setbacks for this one, but it does kind of draw attention to the fact that the whole point is to just, if you run a website, ChatGPT is just going to take what you produce and then they're going to sell it. You get nothing. If that's not theft, I don't know what is. But Alphabet is being, now, Alphabet didn't really care about this news, kind of in line with the move that Amazon made yesterday. Let's refresh this and make sure it's still the same. But Alphabet up 1.4% yesterday on this news. I mean, it initially sold off a little bit when this story broke, and then investors just didn't care because number go up. Now the opening bell just rang. Alphabet shares down about 0.5% here, $176.70 for Alphabet shares. And last but not least for today, we've got jobless claims, pretty similar to what we've seen in previous weeks. Initial jobless claims actually ticked down once again, 227,000 initial jobless claims for the week ending July 5th. That's down from 232,000. That was a holiday week, so I'm not surprised that we saw a reduction in initial claims. Generally, we don't lay people off right before a holiday. So initial claims going down, layoffs don't appear to be a huge problem yet. The layoffs that we're seeing are roughly in line with where they've been. Now, what is a problem for the labor market is continuing jobless claims. Those people who do lose their job can't find another one. That's continuing to get worse. Continuing jobless claims in the United States increased to 1,965,000 for the week ending June 28th, 2025. That's up from 1,955,000 in the previous week. So as you can see, people who lose their job cannot find a new one. That's another tick up. That is higher than the previous high that we saw in June. This one, let's zoom out a little bit. Look at a 3-year chart of continuing claims. You can see big jump up in 23. Then they were sideways for most of 24. We saw a little bit of a pop before the election in the fall of 2024. Now we're seeing another step change higher in the middle of 2025. The labor market continues to weaken despite all the political posturing about how strong the economy is. Isn't it funny how that always happens? And I just want to say thank you very much to Mr. Grandpa. Hey, thanks, Grandpa. It's good to see you again, sir. And thank you for supporting the channel. Grandpa is saying, my company is getting more search business from ChatGPT now than from Google or Bing. How? Wow, that flies in the face of my entire tirade of everything I said about ChatGPT. Hey, Grandpa, do me a favor. Shoot me an email if you wouldn't mind elaborating a little bit about that. I'm curious in reading more. Does that show up in your analytics? Is ChatGPT is the source of your web traffic? Is it translating into more sales? That is a very interesting bit of anecdata, and I was not expecting that. So, Grandpa, thank you very much, both for the support of the channel and for that bit of anecdata. Was not expecting that one at all this morning. So I'm going to read a little bit more into that. And then if I see anything interesting, I will be sure and let you guys know what I find. But until then, I just want to say thank you, everybody, for having your coffee with the Melonheads this morning. Appreciate that very much. Don't forget that like button and that subscribe button on the way out for the algorithm, should you feel so inclined. And also, should you feel so inclined, I've got links down below to YouTube and Patreon memberships. Thank you very much to my magnanimous Melonheads who support the channel there. I appreciate that very much. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. Love you guys. Everybody, till next time, live small and dream big.